Shania Twain was 22 when a head-on crash killed both of her parents. She put her music career on hold to care for her younger siblings, then built a career that sold more than 100 million records. This is how the climb began. Eileen Twain grew up mainly in Timmins and Sudbury, Ontario, in a poor blended family. By 8, she was already singing in school choirs, community centers, seniors' homes, local radio, and bars after alcohol service ended. She later called those smoke-filled clubs part of her education as an artist. At 10, she started writing songs. At 13, she appeared on CBC's The Tommy Hunter Show, looking calm and fully at home near a microphone. As a teenager, she worked at McDonald's, played trumpet, and sang with the top 40 band Longshot. After high school, she moved to Toronto, took voice lessons, recorded demos, and made trips to Nashville with people who believed in her. The door was finally within reach, but it was about to close. On November 1st, 1987, Sharon and Jerry Twain were killed in a head-on collision. Eileen was 22, with a manager, recorded demos, and Nashville connections that had taken years to build. Then her family's emergency became hers. She put her career on hold to care for her younger siblings, trading auditions and trips south for the work waiting at home. Grief did not pause the ordinary demands of a household. There were meals to make, school days to manage, clothes to wash, and bills that still arrived. Each task carried the same fact. The parents who had held the family together were gone. The Nashville dream had once felt urgent. Now it could look like a luxury she had no right to chase. She did not quit because she stopped loving music. She stopped because her siblings needed someone who would stay, and staying would cost her more than time. Her career had depended on movement. It meant late-night performances, demo sessions, and trips between Ontario and Nashville, all of them asking for time and money she no longer controlled. Caring for a household demanded the opposite. It required her to be present each morning, available when school ended, and ready whenever a bill or a family problem appeared. At 22, she was learning the kind of adulthood that does not come with instructions. The support that follows a funeral can fade, but rent, heat, and groceries do not. She could not simply tell the country music business to wait for her. It was already crowded with singers who were free to chase every meeting and every lead. Yet she could not turn away from the people depending on her. This was not a choice between easy and hard. It was a choice between the career she had fought to start and the family she refused to abandon. The decision would leave almost no room for the dream. Putting music aside was sensible on paper. It did not make the loss easier. The industry had no reason to stop while she was caring for her family, and every month away made the road back feel longer. A steady job and a smaller life might have protected the household. Nobody could have called that surrender. It would have been a responsible response to a disaster. But music was not a hobby she could switch off. She had been performing since childhood, writing since 10, and chasing a professional career since high school. Leaving it behind meant losing the work she had already poured into it. Her siblings needed stability. She needed to provide it. Yet the part of her that wrote songs was still alive, asking whether responsibility had to erase everything else. Most people would have called the dream finished. She could not bring herself to call it that. She had begun writing songs when she was 10 years old. That was the part of music she could keep close when travel, recordings, and a full-time career had to wait. A notebook did not require a flight to Nashville or a late-night performance. It gave her a place to put the work that had nowhere else to go. The songs did not solve the family's loss or pay the household bills. They did something quieter. They kept her connected to the artist she had been building since childhood. She could handle responsibility during the day and return to the page when there was time. That decision mattered because it rejected the false choice that grief had tried to impose. She was a caregiver, but she was still a songwriter, and that voice was not finished. Shania's first move forward did not lead to a record label. It led to Deerhurst Resort in Huntsville, Ontario, where a steady singing job could help support the family. Nashville had been the dream, but Deerhurst offered rehearsals, costumes, dinner shows, and a paycheck she could count on. It was a compromise made under pressure, not a glamorous shortcut. She had to show up prepared when she was exhausted, and smile for audiences who knew nothing about the loss waiting at home. Still, the work gave her structure. She could count the income, sharpen her timing, and learn to hold a room even when her mind was elsewhere. Every set became training in professionalism, every paycheck kept the household steadier, and every performance kept the singer from disappearing. Deerhurst was not the life she had planned, but it gave her a way to protect the dream while carrying everyone else. The harder work was still ahead. The work at Deerhurst was the kind nobody puts on a poster. A performance meant rehearsals, set lists, choreography, sound checks, costume changes, laundry, and the same songs delivered with energy after a long day. She learned material she had not written, then guarded whatever time she could find for the songs she had. Some nights, her voice still had to sound bright when she was worn down. Before she could think like an artist, she often had to think like the adult responsible for a household. The path to Nashville was equally unglamorous. Demos had to be recorded, carried to the right people, and heard by people who could still say no. Mary Bailey, the Ontario country singer who had become Shania's manager, had recognized her talent and helped keep those industry connections alive. Her belief did not erase the waiting. It made the waiting possible. If these unseen years matter to you, subscribe and stay with this story. The real change was happening in ordinary nights, when Shania rehearsed, wrote, and woke up ready to carry both the work and her family again. She did it without applause. That discipline would soon meet a different kind of test. Getting a record deal should have been the finish line. For Shania, it became a new problem. After years of pushing toward Nashville, she signed with Mercury Nashville and released her self-titled debut in 1993. On paper, that was rescue. The album, however, did not make her a star. The label could hear the voice, but it had not yet found the version of Shania that would command the world. Much of the debut used songs written by others, and its commercial results were modest. She had survived the crash, taken responsibility for her siblings, worked the resort job, and kept chasing Nashville. Then she arrived and still felt misunderstood. That kind of disappointment is dangerous because it looks like success from the outside. People can say, "You got your chance," while the silence afterward begins to sound permanent. She could have accepted the label's narrow version of her. Instead, the disappointment made one thing clear. Access was not enough. She needed room for the songs that sounded like her. The next decision would carry real risk. Shania's choice was not glamorous. She could keep pleasing a system that had made her smaller, or risk being difficult enough to sound like herself. Producer and songwriter Robert John Lang, known as Mutt, heard her debut and contacted her. That opened a door, but it did not make the choice for her. She had to bring her own writing, her own phrasing, and a sound that joined country storytelling, rock force, and pop hooks. She also had to accept that claiming that space could make her harder to manage. One more try meant more than gratitude for a seat in the room. It meant betting that if the songs sounded like Shania, the next record could finally belong to her, and she was ready to make that bet. That bet changed the work. With Lang, Shania began building around songs that carried her own point of view. The years that had looked disconnected now started to add up. The child who sang in clubs after the alcohol service ended had learned to hold a restless room. The Deerhurst performer had learned how to deliver every night. The young guardian had learned to work when exhaustion was not optional, and the songwriter knew a lyric had to feel true before it could become memorable. Together, she and Lang shaped a sound that crossed country, rock, and pop without asking permission from any one lane. The Woman in Me arrived in 1995, and The Quiet Fight became public momentum. Any Man of Mine made her sound playful, commanding, and unmistakably herself. Sales rose, awards followed, and audiences kept coming because they heard confidence that had been earned under pressure. The industry that once offered her a narrow lane now had to reckon with the road she was making. Her breakthrough was no sudden accident. It came from years of notebooks, rehearsals, demos, sacrifice, and the decision to stop hiding the songwriter inside the singer. The next record would show how far that decision could travel. Come On Over arrived in 1997, and Shania's reach became hard to contain. The album moved through country radio, pop radio, dance floors, and stadiums without shrinking itself for any one format. Its hooks were bright, its choruses built for a whole crowd to sing back, and its confidence reached people who had never thought of themselves as country fans. You're Still the One, That Don't Impress Me Much, and Man, I Feel Like a Woman sounded like an artist who no longer needed permission to take up space. Come On Over became the best-selling country album ever. Shania Twain's total record sales eventually passed 100 million worldwide. Those numbers are enormous, but they leave out the harder part of the story. The woman who had taken a resort job because her family needed money had become a global star with the leverage to define her own career. She had not erased the girl from Timmins. She carried her into arenas where thousands of voices could rise with songs shaped by the life she had fought to keep. She later created Shania Kids Can to support children facing hardship, a cause grounded in what instability can take from a young life. Her empire was never only about records sold. It was built through years spent providing for others while refusing to abandon the work that was hers. Shania Twain's story is not proof that pain earns anyone a record deal. It does not. The lesson is harder and more useful. When the path she had chased was blocked by family duty, she stopped treating that duty as a temporary inconvenience. She took work that helped keep her siblings fed, then kept her craft alive inside the hours she could claim. Responsibility taught her stamina. Nightly performance sharpened her timing. Writing gave her a place to tell the truth when very little else was under her control. If duty has interrupted your dream, do not confuse interruption with surrender. A detour can take years. It can also build the discipline required when the door finally opens. At 22, Shania Twain lost both parents in a head-on collision and became responsible for 3 younger siblings. Before the albums, the awards, and more than 100 million records sold worldwide, there was that decision. She stayed with her family and went to work. She did not wait for grief to become convenient. She carried it, worked through it, and kept writing until she could return to the career she had paused. That is why her success has weight. It was built in years when the job had to come before the dream. Would you have put Nashville on hold to raise your siblings, or chased the opening and trusted someone else to step in? Tell us below, and subscribe for more stories of people who build their futures under impossible pressure. Shania Twain did not rise because the road cleared. She rose because she kept walking under the weight. Would you have done the same?